We've been discussing quite a bit the new Republican House majority's hearings they've been doing, the political stunts, and how bonkers they have been. And now I have for you Democratic Representative Dan Goldman just shutting down Republican Representative Chuck Edwards. When on the House floor, Chuck Edwards says something in reference to the hearing that was done about Twitter coordinating with the FBI to interfere in the 2020 election and Hunter Biden's laptop. And we've walked through more specifically why those claims are indeed dishonest. But here, Goldman nicely responds to this Chuck Edwards remark, and it is great to see.
A recent hearing held by the Oversight and Accountability Committee with former executives from Twitter, a clear and very disturbing pattern emerged. A coordinated effort between a privately owned social media giant and the federal government to suppress critical reporting ahead of the 2020 presidential election.
I have no idea what hearing the gentleman from North Carolina is referring to, because at the hearing with Twitter executives that I attended, where the head of trust and safety was specifically asked if the FBI had given any information, instructions, or directions about the Hunter Biden New York Post story, he specifically said no, they did not receive any information. So if that's what you all think that you're basing this bill on, the actual facts and evidence are precisely the opposite of that.
It is so interesting to see the way that these hearings are playing out, where before the Republican Party got the majority in the House, they were saying all this stuff happened. The FBI, Twitter, Biden coordinated to steal the election from Trump. And if we get the House majority, we're going to do investigations and we're going to prove this. And then they got their chance to do these hearings, and they just did not prove the things that they said they were going to prove, because those things, in the way that they've depicted them, just did not happen. And they've come out of those hearings saying, all right, we proved it, boom. And they can use the hearing that didn't prove the thing as proof that the thing happened. It's really been bonkers to watch. Truly. Next moment here from Dan Goldman.
From New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's funny to hear about how the Democrats are colluding in order to censor free speech on social media when the administration in control of the federal government at the time of the alleged horrific censorship that my Republican colleagues are citing was a Republican administration. It was the administration of President Donald Trump in October of 2020.
From New York.
Yep. So they're proposing a bill. What's being discussed there is a bill aimed at protecting speech on social media. And the motivation, what caused this, has to do with the idea that speech, free speech, the First Amendment or something, was violated during the 2020 campaign with the actions of the FBI and Twitter. But the one thing they point at is the FBI going to Twitter, as intelligence agencies would in this type of situation, and saying, hey, we have intelligence, as we saw in the last presidential election, that there will be foreign influence on social media, on platforms like yours, so be on the lookout. Wasn't forcing, wasn't pressuring, and of course we would expect that of our intelligence agencies if the intelligence they have, even wrong at times, implicates private companies, and private companies could act on it, as long as they're not forcing the company to do something inappropriate, but just providing information. Absolutely. And that has been turned into this coordinated effort to steal the election from Trump. But the fascinating thing is that Trump was the president at the time, and he appointed the FBI director. So a little bit strange that it would be a conspiracy against him when he had the power in that situation, and the FBI director was appointed by him. Last clip here from Dan Goldman.
And yet somehow I gather that the FBI is supposed to be a Democratic-leaning organization, an agency doing the Democrats' bidding. Well, you could have fooled me back in 2016 when the director of the FBI announced 10 days before the election that he was reopening an investigation into the Democratic candidate for president, while an investigation was also ongoing into the Republican candidate for president, and yet that remained quiet. Explain to me how that is the FBI doing the bidding of the Democrats.
So the response to my previous point may have been something to the effect of, or could be something to the effect of, sure, the director was appointed by Trump and Trump was the president at the time, but this is about the deep state, and this is about just the nature of an organization like the FBI. So many individuals, as I said, part of the deep state within it. That's why this happened. But there's just not a history of that making itself present within the FBI. Some liberal bias, pro-liberal bias, and anti-conservative bias, as Dan Goldman highlighted there. So it just does not at all stand up to the facts. And it's really good to see Democratic representatives within these hearings, but here on the House floor, actually pushing back aggressively, because so often it seems Republicans are good at bringing conversations onto their kind of home turf and creating these narratives, and then Democrats kind of just, But at least since the Republicans took over their majority in the House, the Democrats have actually been pretty aggressive in pushing back and calling out the dishonesty, which is really, really good to see. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.